Welcome to this final session, session 6 of the Empower Your Wellbeing course. We've been on an entire journey through the macronutrients, through the gut microbiome, and found this solid foundation of understanding of when we eat something, what happens in the body, and how do we utilize that knowledge to apply it to choosing foods in an empowered way, using nutrition labels, and being guided by our deep intuition of the colourful, flavourful, natural foods really supporting the best of the body's health. This session is here for us to gather all the different pieces, all the different threads that we're weaving it into one thing. And it's here as a foundation piece for you to be able to acknowledge what it is you may have tweaked and changed since you began this course. If you look back on those notes of what it is you'd really like to get from the course when we very began, this is a great moment to look to those and consider, what has changed? What did I discover that I didn't even expect? What is it that I'd like a bit more of? This may be the end of the course, but it doesn't have to be the end of the journey. This can be something that goes on to support you in your nourished, empowered life. Now, there's a concept that I'd love to bring into this final session, and it's a concept of eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is translated from the ancient Greek to mean human thriving. And I'd like just to settle into your body now the potential that you could have a eudaimonic life, that you could thrive as who you are. Many of our ways of being are in this survival mode, like coping, just getting through, just getting by, having enough, making do. And we're stepping into this idea of what could it mean for us to thrive. Now, in the UK, there was a study done on over 80,000 people to find out what were the qualities and aspects of people that thrive and feel that they're thriving. They did this study looking at people's career, where they lived, what they had, what they'd studied, what they ate, what their postcode was, like all different kinds of things. And the one main factor that predicted the greatest sense of human thriving in each person's life was the amount of fruits and vegetables they had. And for people who had 7, 8 or 9 portions of fruit or vegetables a day, they had the best sense of a eudaimonic life. It's incredible to acknowledge how much what we choose in each meal and snack can actively support us to feel really good and to have the kind of life that we want. One of the things I'm incredibly passionate about is supporting our inner world to be able to be supportive of who we are and how we want to behave in the world. To support us to bring more of what we've been cultivating into our life, I invite you to take your pen and paper and join me in this exercise. So we're going to begin with this question. What have you been doing here? It's a funny question, but what is it that you've been doing here? For some people I work with, when they ask this question, they say, is it okay if it's not actually about food? And it's like, yeah, what we're doing here is far more holistic and bigger picture than just necessarily food, the relationship with food, the body and ourselves. So what is it that you've been doing here? What is it that has been meaningful? What is it that's been useful? What is it that's felt important? What have you been doing here? So take a minute of inquiry. Well, what has this meant to me? What has this been for? What am I cultivating here? And just see what words come. And having a little minute with that, maybe pausing the video for as long as you need. And when you've got some essence captured of what we've been doing here, we're going to come to this second question. I would like to continue, whatever it is you said, whatever the word that comes here, I would like to continue, and you might make this into just a few small words. And you're going to ask yourself because. And we're going to ask this in this genuinely curious way. You want to carry on doing that because? And letting that because land in the body, land in the mind, hearing it, feeling it, and letting your pen write. This is really where you just let whatever comes out the pen come out the pen. And it can be incredibly useful to do 5 becauses. So you do because and then let the pen write. And because and let the pen write. And because, and because, and because. When we do this, you will find that you connect much deeper to what it is that makes this truly important. And therefore, it will raise it on the priority list of our subconscious to allow this to become more easeful, more natural, something that we don't have to think about doing but can just happen and support us in our life. The purpose of this course is not to make us all into really strict, adept foodies with rules and dogmas, and we've got to do this and we can't eat that. It's about how can we let food become just a natural part of our life and maybe even sit in the background just supporting us so we can do the things that really matter to us. So take this question, what is it you've been doing here? And I would like to continue this because, and see what you find, see what you discover, and then we'll move on into the final session. We've been building our empowered relationship with food, our body, and ourselves by approaching this from two different aspects. One, we've been looking at nutrition and gaining a depth of understanding of what happens in the body and being able to apply this into our life with simple things to add, swap, and discover. And we've also been looking at our internal language and way that we speak and think about food and ourselves. And I would argue that understanding the nutrition side is one bit, and it's a really interesting part of it. Making that be able to happen in your life is actually having a deep understanding of what to add, swap, and discover. Even if we forget certain aspects of why it does that or how it does that, the course is here for us to come back to that kind of information if you ever want to access it again. What happens most is knowing what to add and knowing what to swap to. With the other side of it, the relationship with food, the way we think about it, our sort of empowered sense of it, I would argue that this is the piece that has the most impact long term in us being able to maintain a relationship with food, our body, and ourselves that actually serves us and actually continues to feel good on and on into the future. So let's overview what are the tools that we have gained. We'll begin with our empowered language. So we began in session 1 with this concept that we have food talk. I would describe this as our inner world or our relationship with food, with eating, and all the different aspects that come along with that. We developed first a sense of compassionate self-awareness. This was this ability to notice, an actual interest in noticing what is it that's going on inside, and to build that awareness with compassion, because we began to understand in that very first session how much the food industry is actually benefiting from the cycles of addiction and the overeating and the sugary foods and the foods made of flour and oil and all this kind of stuff. We learned that we were in this bigger, wider system, and that actually our individual choice is heavily impacted by those high manipulative, marketing tactics. So developing this compassionate self-awareness was the most important key, and I really hope this can be something that you cultivate and continue to grow inside yourself, because it is a foundation stone for our well-being. From here we went off into our second week and began to work with empowered language. For me, empowered language is the language of choice, and we could say in a way it's a bit like getting real with what's actually going on. It's like, what do we want to do, what don't we want to do, what feels good right now, what would support me, what would help me to feel good, what might I like to try, and we're bringing it very much into the present. It's about what is it I'd like to do now, what is it I'd like to do today, what is it I'm going to choose in this moment. Because that's the only time that we're really, really making a choice, is in the present moment. It's the empowered language of choice. I want, I don't want, I'm trying, I'm curious. No thank you, yes please, all that stuff. It's this sense of like, okay, I know what I want and I can actually respond here. Sometimes people speak to me about really struggling with the empowered language in case they're going to offend somebody else, especially eating or sharing with maybe family or friends who maybe cook something or make something that you don't want to eat or don't want to share in. This is where we have this kind of space to really choose, okay, well, do we want to eat it or not? Because if we truly don't want to eat it, finding a way of saying, I'm really grateful for the love and the sharing, and for lots of different reasons, I would like to eat this. Sometimes I take my own food with me when I go places, and sometimes I gladly share in what's been given, even if it isn't my ideal, most nutritious thing I would eat, because it's not what we eat at a celebration or what we eat at a special event. Our well-being is cultivated from what it is we eat generally across our daily habitual meals, snacks, breakfast, lunches, dinners. So focusing on the tiny, tiny details and getting obsessed and stuck in them is not empowering. This is a disempowering model. We're stepping into this spacious place of empowered choice and saying, right now in this moment, what is the best decision for me? That could be having a smaller portion of something, having some fruit, having some nuts, carrying some stuff with you in your bag. You can find out how this works for you and how this fits in your life. And just knowing that you're the one that's choosing. It's not necessarily coming from other people's expectations or from food industry preferences of what it is we choose and buy and indulge in and all that kind of stuff. So practicing with this empowered language, and just as a sneaky tip, you can take this into your whole life. It doesn't have to be with food. It's very nice. So we've got the self-awareness. We're heading into this idea of empowered language and choosing. And from there, we started to cultivate the skill of acknowledging and maybe even celebrating ourselves. The reason for this is by we're choosing what is our focus. Are we focusing on the moments that it didn't go right, on the things that we didn't really want to eat, on the things that didn't make us feel good, on the choices that we decided were bad or not good enough, or all those old stories in the old model before we got the empowered language? When we tune our focus into what's working, what's feeling good, what is it I'd like to do, next time in that same situation? How might I support myself? When we start asking these questions, when this becomes our focus, then we start noticing, okay, well that made me feel good, so I'm more likely to do it again. When we notice the things we're choosing when we're going shopping or out, eating out, being able to celebrate our nourishing choices is incredibly important, because it gives us that inner affirmation of, wow, I'm really taking care of me. I'm really looking out for me. And that little inner celebration will release a positive feeling in the body that will drive you and support you to continue on this journey. So really giving yourself this feedback is so, so, so important. At first, it might feel uncomfortable because it isn't necessarily something we're all very familiar with. However, uncomfortable is just unfamiliar. We just haven't yet got into a sense of, okay, these are the words that feel good for me. This is how I can receive my own acknowledgement and my own celebration in a positive and feel good kind of way. So carrying on with that journey of discovery, maybe letting yourself journal about it. What is it you can say to yourself that will allow you to really know that you are looking after you? Following this thread, we moved into our 4th session together. We were looking at treating ourselves. We built this foundation that treating ourselves is a really great idea. However, if our only way or our main way of treating ourselves is to eat things that actually harm the body because of their saturated fats, sugars, flours, processed additives, all that kind of stuff that feeds the pigeons and damages the gut microbiome and throws out all the other aspects of the body as well. If our only way to treat ourselves is by actually harming ourselves, then that creates a negative, degenerative cycle and means that we have to limit when we treat ourselves because it's bad for us. What we're stepping into here is treating ourselves well. And this can involve maybe different ways of eating, and it can also involve different things that you could do or different activities that actually make you feel well in what I would describe as a generative way. So when you do them, instead of feeling, slump or heavy or bad about it or wishing that you hadn't, regret or shame or guilt or any of the stuff that can come if we do eat some of the foods that really aren't in line with how we want to treat ourselves, instead of having that I treated myself but maybe not very well and for someone else's profit and now I feel bad about it, we're stepping into a world of, I'm treating myself well. And when we do those things, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's putting some music on that we love, whether it's having a dance, calling a friend, sharing a meal with somebody, whatever it is that really feels like a treat for us, that adds to how we feel in our life, then we have this generative process. And we're not just changing then our relationship with the food, but we're drastically changing our relationship with ourselves and being on our own team. We're being on the side of the body, of the mind, of the sense of self, and heading toward that goal of the empowered, nourished life. We then took this into our penultimate session, session 5, and we had this question of, well, how nourishing could this be? For me, this really reminds me of the public health perspective on well-being and society, and it's this idea that could everything in society support people's well-being? Could everything be conducive to people feeling good in their lives, in society, in communities? And when we have this question of, well, how nourishing could this be? We start to open up a new sense of potential about how our life can actively support us to feel good and to feel well. This question can be unique to each of us in finding out what it is that would make you feel more nourished, more wholesome, more fulfilled in your daily life, whether that's through your work, whether that's through your creative projects, whether that's through the way that you spend time with your friends or spend time with yourself. It could be as simple as getting a mug that makes you feel nicer about drinking hot beverages and then you enjoy them more. It Could be as simple as buying a water bottle that looks appealing to you so that you drink more water. Could be as simple as saying, oh, you know what, I'm going to spend a bit of time on the phone this evening with a friend rather than eating in front of the telly because it feels more nourishing. All these things, all these tools are things that we can cultivate and continue to journey with. I find it really useful to journal and to write, or maybe to speak to somebody else about what it is, or even speaking aloud to myself to gain that clarity of what it is that makes these things important and which ones I'd love to welcome more of into my life. It's not the expectation that by this point in the sessions, you're like, yes, I do all of these perfectly. These are things that we can welcome in and continue to work with in a way that feels good and supportive for us. Let's have a little look at the overview of our nutrition side of things. Our journey in the world of nutrition began with asking the question of what is food even for? We found the answer that food is there to supply the body with nutrients, and that those nutrients are the resources that the body utilizes in order to build, heal, and repair itself. When we give our body the best of those resources, the body has the best capacity to build, heal, and repair, and therefore gives us a strong foundation for our health and well-being. Now, within the world of nutrients, resources, building, healing, and repair, we found that our sleep is really supported by having a break in eating before we go to bed. So we were looking at this idea of there being a 24-hour cycle and having an eating window through the day that gives us time to settle into our digestive process in the morning and gives us a break in our digestive process before going to sleep in the evening. This is a tool that I come back to frequently in my life. I'm using the eating window, aiming for something like 10 to 11 hours. Usually I aim for around 9 and 7 p.m, something like that. This eating window with timings to suit you, whatever they are, can be something that really supports us if we've got out of habits or out of swing with food, or we've maybe been somewhere in an unusual food environment to us and we want to really come back to ourselves and to give ourselves a little bit of routine. This can be a great tool to come back to. So using the eating window to support that. This can be especially useful if we're ever experiencing any stress or we're feeling unwell, because upping that building, healing and repairing time supports the body to come back into a natural balance. So this isn't something you have to stick by or live by if it doesn't work for you, but you having the ability to use it when it will suit you can be really useful. We then stepped into the world of the macronutrients and began with carbohydrates. We learnt that within carbohydrates, they are the best fuel for the body, and they give us the ability to focus, move, and do the things we want to do. And when we can focus, move, and do the things they want to do, it helps us to feel more like ourselves. Now, within the world of carbohydrates, we found that there was the nutritionally devoid products, all the things made of flour and sugar and starch, and the way that these impact the brain by causing those surges of dopamine that lead to addictive cycles. What we found was that for the very best of nourishing relationship with carbohydrate, we want to be eating high fibre. So the tool we have there is our fibre test. The fibre test can help us know, will this cause a sugar spike or will this not? And it will allow us to look at any different food packets and compare them to find out which is the best, most nourishing choice in that moment available to you there. Within the fibre test, this is because the fibre slows the digestion of the sugars and allows us to feel full and satisfied for longer. Ideally, if the body could choose, we would be eating 2 different whole grains each day. And when we're not having the whole grains, instead on any kind of product that's made by people from any of these more like flour, sugar, starchy things, any of the refined products, then the fibre test is really useful for that. We then moved into looking at fats, and we found that without specific types of fats, then our brain cannot physically create itself. So it's fundamental for the brain, as well as having other processes like helping us to digest vitamins, helping us to insulate the body and having a backup energy store. So the fats are incredibly useful, and what we found was that there are different types of fats, and the most useful fats, absolutely essential to our health and well-being, are those unsaturated fats, which come to us in our nuts, seeds, and olives and avocados. If you've been adding more of these to your diet in the past few weeks, then you have been humongously supporting yourself to have the best opportunity for physical and brain well-being. We learned within this session that if the body could choose, we ideally would have a very low amount of trans fats, which come in animal products and in damaged oils, and we'd also have a low amount of saturated fats. So we got a tool for looking at labels, and it was our fat test. And it helps us to find out, has this got a lot of saturated fat in it? Do I want to reduce the portion or find something else? And could it contain damaged oils? This can also help us to find out, where are those unsaturated fats? Where are the things that are humongously supporting the body to have the best of well-being? So you left well armed and went out into the world, eating more nuts and seeds, adding them in, and with this tool to support you. We then moved into our session on protein, and it was this wonderful question of bonus or baggage. And what we found was that when it comes to the different protein sources, we can get all the ones we need from both plant foods and animal products. And when we eat things that come from plants, we are getting endless bonus. This is things like the fibers, the unsaturated fats, as well as the proteins we need. And as we found out in the 5th session, loads of micronutrients, minerals and phytonutrients as well. So when we're eating plants, it's just endless bonus. And then on the more baggage side of things, we began to learn that all animal products contain cholesterol, and that cholesterol is damaged when it's exposed to heat, light and oxygen, and causes humongous risk to the body. So how do we bring this into our life? What was our action here? Our action was to add in more beans and other sources of plant-based protein. That could include things like tofu, tempeh, or meat alternatives. We then moved into our final session on nutrition and began with our micronutrients, and then moved on to our gut microbiome. I love this session because it really gets into this idea of the body being really intelligent and tapping into the colourful, flavourful, natural ways that we love to eat, boosting the flavour of our meals by adding more herbs and spices to support us to have more antioxidants for better healing and repair, and boosting the colours to add in a greater variety of micronutrients, vitamins and those incredible phytonutrients with all those properties, everything from anti-cancer to being neuroprotective, giving our body the best resources to support itself. Within the world of the gut microbiome, once again it came down to beans and fruit, because these have some of the best fibres in that naturally ferment inside the body and supply us with the short chain fatty acids that allow us to heal and repair the lining of the gut. We also learned about brain-derived neurotrophic factor and how the more beans and fruit we eat, the more we feed those happy little rabbits that live down in the lower intestinal tract, those Prevotella bacteria. The more they are fed, the more we have a molecule of brain-derived neurotrophic factor in the brain, supporting us to have the absolute best and foundation of our mental health and resilience. So you might have been enjoying more herbs and more spices too, with this deep knowing that they support your body to be able to repair itself actively. So each of these sessions held its complexities and depths of understanding the specific processes within the body. And when it comes down to bringing it into life, it can actually be incredibly simple. We're looking for high fibre and eating as much nourishing whole food as possible. Whole grains, nuts, seeds, olives, avocados, beans, tofu, tempeh, herbs, spices, fruit. Making meals that are colourful, flavourful and help us to feel really good. When we eat like this, we have the highest opportunity to reduce the risk of disease, including mental and physical health conditions, and to give us the opportunity for that eudaimonic life, this human thriving, where we have the energy levels that support us, the mindset that supports us, and the way of being in the world with resilience to allow us to navigate the way that we want to live. If you've been doing any of these, even adding a few more nuts, a few more seeds, whatever the simple thing is, now is a great time to bring in that sense of acknowledging what is it you've done really well, what is it you're really glad about, what is it you want to continue, and maybe even asking, okay, what is it I'd like to do more of? What is it I'd love to bring in and tweak? This idea of adding, swapping and discovering is one of the most empowering ways of tweaking the diet. So don't focus on what you want to stop or do less of, but focus on what is it that's going to happen instead. What is it that you want more of? Letting this model be the basis will support you in all your choices going ahead. Before we bring this course to a close, I'd love to share with you about what I call the ripple effect. So in the way that you may have been tweaking and changing the way that you eat and the way that you speak to yourself and engage in the world and the relationship with food, your body and yourself, there will be people around you who may have noticed. It could have been colleagues, could have been friends, could have been family. It might have stirred up some stuff for other people, because sometimes seeing someone else make a nourishing choice can make them reflect and feel maybe a bit uncomfortable about the choices they're making. However, what we're doing in this embodiment of a nourishing life is becoming a little bit of a role model, a little bit of a guide, and a little bit of an inspiration for other people. By eating in this kind of way, we're actually taking one step closer to living in a more natural and holistic world. If you think of everything maybe that you bought differently, every time we spend money, we're essentially investing and saying, please do more of this. Please continue doing this. So when we give our money to Nestle or to Mars or to any of the other multinational corporations making humongous amounts of profit from sugar, syrup and flour, whenever we give them money, we're essentially saying, please carry on, please continue doing this. Every time we've been swapping and choosing something else, more fruits or more veg or something with more fibre in it, that's what we're investing in. We're saying, please keep doing that, more of that, please. I have this dream that if everybody for the next 3 days decided to not buy anything made by Coca-Cola, what would happen? The impact that would have on them as a company, as an organization, in the stock market, all that kind of stuff, it would be humongous. For me, the ripple effect is coming back to this idea that we actually have a huge amount of power, even within a capitalist and consumerist society. What we choose really does determine what is going to be made available to us in the world. We can see this in the vegan movement. Now, vegan is an entire lifestyle that is not just about diet. And with more people becoming vegan in their lifestyle and choosing more vegan ways of eating, there has been an absolute explosion of vegan products becoming available, because whatever it is we want to buy as a general public will then determine what is being created. Because the organisations, in a way, don't really care what we buy. All they care is that we buy it from them. So we do have the power. Now, I'm not advocating that all vegan food is nourishing. It absolutely is not. It's simply an example to demonstrate how powerful our choice is, because you can't go into a single supermarket or shop without seeing some sort of plant-based or vegan section now. It just didn't exist 10 years ago. What we choose can have a profound impact on the people around us and the wider society and world at large. So I'm supporting you and celebrating you in all the things you've added, all the things you've swapped, and I really very much hope that you can feel that sense of how important it is for you to care for yourself, because that ripples out into the rest of the world as well. So you might be wondering, what happens next? So this course is here to support you should you want to come back to it. If you would like to work together one-to-one, there is coaching sessions available. I offer something called parts integration coaching, where we work with our inner world to bring things into alignment so that we don't have any kind of struggle or battle or confusion or doubt or the self-negative talks or behaviours that might make things difficult for us and increase the challenge of being who we are. And it helps us to find that alignment and that deeper sense of self to become more of who we are in the world. We could also work together doing Qigong. Qigong is an ancient Chinese practice where we work with the body in simple movements, with breath and with stillness, to be able to bring a more aligned sense of self and to open up the physical body to release the tensions and ultimately to cultivate more harmony within. If you'd like details of any of these things, you can find them all on www.harmony-within.org. If I could ask one thing of you, it would be to share with other people about this course. Please tell them about it, because if other people in your life know about it, then sharing the fibre test, boosting things with greens, that can become a norm and a new habit within the ways that you spend time with your friends and family. And the more people can access empowered, informed choice, the more this can ripple out into the health and well-being of each person as their right to feel good in their body, in their life and in this world. Thank you so much for joining, and I'm wishing you so well and hope that we get to work together again in the future.